Welcome to our channel Hashmiclinics.
So imagine going to a medical practitioner today because, you've got this terrible stomach ache.
Right.
And they prescribe you a medicine specifically because, get this, you've recently been writing bad romantic poetry in the moonlight. You intensely crave pickles, and you absolutely hate being looked at.
I mean, it sounds like a literal punchline today.
It really does.
Because if you go to a gastroenterologist, you expect, well, a very clinical, highly targeted approach to your digestive system. You definitely don't expect them to ask about your relationship with stained glass windows or, your poetic aspiration.
Right. But if you step into the world of 19th century holistic medicine, suddenly that bizarre combination, the poetry, the pickles, the paranoia, that's the exact diagnostic fingerprint a practitioner is looking for.
It is. It's wild to think about.
It's totally wild. So today's deep dive is exploring a massive stack of historical homeopathic medical notes detailing one single, incredibly complex remedy. It's called Antimonium Crudum, or black sulfide of antimony.
Yeah, that's the one.
And our mission here is to unpack this highly specific constitutional profile. We really want to see how these historical practitioners meticulously mapped the strange, intricate connections between human emotions, digestion, and the physical body.
Which is really an exercise in understanding how humans operate as a single closed-loop system. I mean, long before modern science started publishing papers on the mind-gut connection or, psychosomatic illness.
Oh, yeah, decades before.
Exactly. These 19th century observers were painstakingly tracking how a person's emotional fragility literally dictates their physical ailments.
So whether you are curious about alternative medicine or you're just fascinated by the history of how humans observe the body, this deep dive offers you a really striking look at a totally different medical paradigm.
It definitely will.
It will seriously make you rethink how your own moods might be steering their physical health. And to understand how this specific remedy works, we really have to look at the baseline personality these practitioners were targeting, because in this framework, you don't just treat a stomach ache.
No, not at all. You have to understand who the patient is before you even look at what is physically wrong with them.
Right. Who's the person hosting the stomach ache?
Exactly. The mental symptoms and the gastric sphere are the absolute center of gravity for this remedy. And I think before we get into the psychology, it helps to just briefly understand the premise of the medicine itself.
Yeah, let's set the stage. What is this stuff?
Well, black sulfide of antimony is a heavy, raw mineral. And in 19th century homeopathy, the foundational philosophy was cures-like.
Okay.
So the belief was that a substance that causes specific symptoms in a healthy person can actually cure those same symptoms in a sick person, provided, of course, that the substance is heavily diluted.
Right, you dilute it to remove its toxicity and just leave its therapeutic imprint.
Exactly.
So they are taking this harsh, crude mineral, diluting it way down, and giving it to patients who possess a remarkably crude or extreme physical and emotional constitution.
You hit the nail on the head. And the psychological profile, indicating a need for Antimonium Crudum, is defined by, absolute extremes of emotion.
Extremes.
Yeah, these practitioners noted that this remedy is primarily suited for the extremes of life, meaning infants and the elderly.
Okay, that makes sense.
And specifically, those who have a physical inclination to grow fat.
Mm-hmm.
These are periods in life where the body's vital force is often seen as either undeveloped or waning, right?
Right.
Leaving the system highly vulnerable.
And the emotional states they mapped out for these vulnerable periods are wildly specific. I mean, let's take the child profile from the sources.
Oh, the child profile is fascinating.
It is. The historical texts describe a child who is exceedingly fretful and peevish, but it goes so far beyond a standard toddler tantrum.
Way beyond.
This child cannot bear to be touched. They cannot even bear to be looked at. They become furious at every little attention given to them, and they will absolutely scream and cry if they are washed in cold water.
And the observation here by the practitioners is an intense systemic hypersensitivity to any external interaction.
Any interaction at all.
Right. The boundary between the child and the outside world is virtually non-existent. The very act of being perceived or just receiving a caregiver's touch is interpreted by the nervous system as a physical threat or a painful irritation.
So reading this, it sounds exactly like a disturbed stray cat that hisses and bites when you try to pet it or even look in its direction.
That is a perfect analogy.
It's just pure defensive hostility. But then The adult or teen profile swings to the complete opposite extreme.
It really does.
It moves from that defensive hostility to an overwhelming, almost paralyzing sentimentality.
The contrast is jarring, honestly, but it's heavily documented in the notes. These adult and teenage patients become ecstatic and, quote, lovesick in the moonlight or in mellow twilight.
Lovesick in the mellow twilight. That's so poetic.
Right. They develop this irresistible desire to speak in rhymes and repeat verses. The texts specifically highlight nervous, hysterical individuals who are completely overcome by mellow light streaming through stained glass windows.
Stained glass windows, I mean, it's incredibly specific.
Very.
But there is a much darker side to that extreme romanticism, right? Because when that sentimental bubble bursts, the crash is just devastating.
And a terrifying crash.
On the flip side of this moonlit poetry is profound sulkiness, crossness, and a complete loathing of life. The psychological plunge leads to abject despair and even suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, the texts mention that specifically.
That's right, often specifically by drowning or shooting, brought on by disappointed love. But hold on, let me stop you there.
Sure.
You're telling me one single mineral treats a hissing, untouchable toddler and a suicidal, lovesick teenager reciting poetry in the moonlight.
I know, it sounds contradictory.
Those are entirely different psychological universes. Like, how does that make any medical sense?
Well, it makes sense when you look at the systemic imbalance rather than just the surface behavior.
Okay, walk me through that.
In this constitutional framework, both the angry child and the ecstatic poet are suffering from the exact same underlying dysfunction. It's an extreme, unshielded sensitivity to external stimuli.
Unshielded.
Right. The nervous system simply lacks all insulation.
So the circuitry is just entirely overloaded regardless of what the input actually is.
Precisely. For the infant, the stimulus overloading the circuit is a physical touch, a cold bath, or an invasive gaze.
Gotcha.
But for the teenager, the stimulus is the emotional weight of a relationship, or even just the visual input of moonlight or stained glass. The system is so fragile, so reactive, that any input short-circuits their emotional regulation.
Wow.
Yeah, the child responds with rage. The young adult responds with overwhelming sentimentality that rapidly decays into despair. But the root cause, that raw, unshielded sensitivity, is completely identical.
That is fascinating. But, I mean, if their nervous system is already this overloaded by a single touch or a beam of moonlight, what happens when they actually try to process something physically heavy, like food?
It's a disaster.
It must be.
It really is a complete physiological failure.
Yeah.
And this is where the 19th century mapping of the mind-gut connection becomes so prominent in the text.
Right.
The stomach is essentially the physical manifestation of their emotional fragility. Every emotional shock, every sensory overload seems to hit them right in the solar plexus.
And their relationship with food is just totally chaotic. The medical records describe the patient as often being a glutton who eats far beyond their capacity.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, they have this immense desire to take in food, perhaps trying to fill an emotional void or ground themselves. But their body has absolutely no vital strength to appropriate or digest it.
Not at all.
They just sit there feeling constantly overloaded and distended, even when they haven't eaten recently.
And their digestion is immediately derailed by very, very specific triggers. We're talking sour wine, vinegar, acids, bread, pastry, and pork.
Pork and pastry.
Yes. A normal person might feel a bit sluggish after a heavy pork pie and a glass of cheap wine. But for the Antimonium Crudum patient, any of these will completely shut their entire digestive system down.
Yet, amidst this total digestive collapse, there's this bizarre paradox.
Oh, the cravings.
Yes. Despite the fact that acids and vinegar destroy their stomach, they develop an intense, almost uncontrollable craving for cucumbers, acids, and pickles.
It's so weird.
They crave the exact substances that guarantee their physical suffering.
Which is, if you think about it, a brilliant physical mirroring of their psychological state.
Oh, how so?
Well, the romantic teenager craves the intense, idealized affection that ultimately leads to their profound despair, right?
Mm-hmm.
The biological system desires the exact stimulus that it lacks the capacity to process.
Oh, wow. That's a huge connection.
Yeah, the destructive loop plays out in the mind, and it plays right out in the gut, too.
The body is literally craving the frequency that shatters the glass. That's wow. And the physical symptoms of this failed processing are just miserable.
It's really awful.
The texts detail constant belching that tastes exactly like the food they ate hours ago because the stomach has simply stopped working.
Just completely stalled.
Yeah. They experience vomiting without any preceding nausea, or conversely, terrible, agonizing nausea without the relief of vomiting.
And especially in the older patients, the system gets so confused that it constantly alternates between severe diarrhea and stubborn constipation.
It's just chaos down there.
Complete chaos. But among all these chaotic gastric symptoms, these historical practitioners looked for one ultimate guiding physical red flag. It is the visual keynote of the entire remedy.
Let me guess. The tongue.
The tongue. The practitioners were incredibly meticulous about this observation. To confidently prescribe this specific remedy, the patient typically presents with a thickly coated milky-white tongue.
Milky-white?
Yeah, the clinical descriptions compare it to a tongue that has been painted with whitewash or, quote, covered in snow. It is the defining visual anchor of this constitutional state.
Okay, but wait. Surely anyone can get a stomach ache and a coated tongue from eating too much pork and drinking bad wine, right?
Sure, of course.
Does that automatically mean they need black sulfide of antimony? Or do they only need it if they have the white tongue, the stomach ache, and they're writing moonlight poetry about their ex?
That's the key question. The true diagnostic power in this 19th century system is the pattern recognition of the entire constellation of symptoms.
Whole package.
Exactly. A gastroenterologist today treats the stomach ache in isolation. But the homeopathic practitioner was looking at the sum total of the human being. Anyone can overeat and feel sick.
Right.
But the combination of that profound emotional hypersensitivity, the total gastric failure triggered by sour wine, the paradoxical craving for pickles, and that specific whitewashed tongue.
All of it together.
All of it. The entire interlocking pattern is what isolates this exact remedy out of thousands of botanical and mineral options.
It's a holistic fingerprint.
Yes.
And if the internal organs are failing this spectacularly to process the world, both emotionally and digestively, it makes sense that the body's next step is to try and keep the world out entirely.
Which brings us to the outer defenses.
Right, the outer defenses of the body. Because the body's internal failure seems to force a strange, crude physical buildup on the very outside of the person.
And this is where the remedy's name, Antimonium Crudum, reveals its literal translation. The physical body itself becomes crude. The skin and the extremities harden and deform.
The clinical descriptions for this are incredibly graphic. Like, there is a disposition to abnormal, lumpy, and hard growths on the skin.
It's not pretty.
No. We're talking about thick, hard, honey-colored scabs that constantly ooze. The skin erupts in pimples, vesicles, and pustules, accompanied by intense burning and itching.
And the deformation extends aggressively to the nails, too. They grow incredibly slowly, they're utterly brittle, and they grow completely out of shape.
Ouch.
Yeah. The practitioners noted that if an Antimonium Crudum patient crushes or injures a fingernail, the body just refuses to heal it normally. Instead, the nail grows out in jagged splits, looking remarkably like warts, with strange horny spots developing underneath the nail bed.
That sounds so painful. And the feet endure the worst of it. The soles develop these massive horny corns and callosities that are excessively tender.
Just agonizing.
The patient experiences agonizing pain trying to walk, especially on hard stone pavements. The text actually notes that even the slightest pressure on the skin immediately creates a painful callosity.
Which is a huge clue.
It really is. It's as if the body is desperately trying to build a suit of armor. Like the person is too emotionally fragile to be looked at, too sensitive to be touched. Their stomach can't handle a simple piece of bread. So the biology literally builds a hard, horny, crusty shell on the skin, the nails, and the soles of the feet to physically protect itself from the outside world.
It's a brilliant observation, and the historical texts directly validate that psychological physical link. They explicitly define the Antimonium Crudum patient as someone who is, quote, crude mentally and physically.
Mentally and physically.
Exactly. The outward physical hardening, the agonizing calluses, the split wart-like nails, the thick oozing scabs is the biological equivalent of the patient's closed-off, irritable, and painfully sensitive psychological state.
Wow.
When the mind lacks the boundaries to process trauma or daily stimuli, the body literally attempts to wall it off physically.
The body is literalizing the emotional state. It's building a physical wall to compensate for the lack of emotional boundaries.
Precisely.
So we have this highly armored, highly sensitive person. How does a person like this actually interact with their environment? Because the practitioners documented some incredibly specific and seemingly contradictory environmental triggers, right?
Yes, what they call modalities.
Modalities.
The modalities dictate what makes the patient's symptoms better or worse. And for this unshielded profile, the environmental sensitivities are just as extreme and erratic as the emotional ones.
Let's look at the aggravations, the things that make them worse. Radiant heat is a massive systemic trigger.
Massive.
They absolutely cannot bear the heat of the sun. It completely exhausts their vital force. And there's a wild detail in the notes. A respiratory spasm or a violent cough can be triggered or made significantly worse simply by looking into an open fire.
I mean, just think about that. The sheer visual and radiant heat emanating from a fireplace is enough to cause a physical spasm in the chest of this patient.
That's wild.
Their sensory processing is that fragile.
But at the same exact time, they are violently aggravated by cold, specifically cold bathing or falling into cold water.
Right.
A cold bath isn't just uncomfortable for them. It can cause a violent headache, completely suppress menstruation, or bring on severe sudden diarrhea.
They are biologically attacked by the extremes of both ends of the thermometer.
Right. But then you look at what actually ameliorates their condition, what makes them feel better. They feel better in the open air, they feel better during rest, and paradoxically, they feel significantly better from a warm, moist bath.
It does sound like a contradiction at first.
It sounds completely contradictory. They are exhausted by the sun, their cough gets worse if they just look at a fireplace, and they will scream and develop a migraine if washed in cold water. But a warm bath makes them feel better. How does that work mechanically?
Well, it highlights the nuance of 19th century medical observation. They didn't just write down sensitive to temperature and move on, you know.
Right, they were more specific.
They delineated the profound difference between radiant heat, like the sun, or an open fire, which is dry, penetrating, and visually stimulating and applied. Moist heat, like a warm bath.
Oh, I see. It's about the delivery mechanism of the energy.
Exactly. Radiant heat penetrates and overstimulates an already fried nervous system. Cold water is an aggressive, shocking assault to their fragile physical boundaries. But warm, moist heat, that is enveloping. It softens that crude, hardened, scabby exterior we talked about. It gently warms and soothes the system without shocking the vital force. The practitioners recognize that the body responds entirely differently to different textures of environmental energy.
That makes perfect sense. It's the difference between standing in front of a blast furnace and being wrapped in a warm blanket.
Exactly right.
And speaking of how energy moves, we have to talk about one of the most fascinating concepts in these notes. Metastasis, or the shifting of symptoms through the body.
Oh, this is a cornerstone of homeopathic philosophy. The belief that illnesses don't just magically disappear.
Yeah.
If they're not truly cured, they simply migrate to different tissues.
The historical examples here are incredible. Like, a patient might suffer from severe gout and arthritis with painful, swollen nodules in their finger joints. Then suddenly the pain in the fingers vanishes.
And you'd think, great, they're cured.
Right, a surface-level observation would say they were cured, but immediately their stomach becomes violently distended, painful, and full of gas. The illness hasn't gone away. It has literally packed its bags and relocated from the extremities to the gut.
Or symptoms will rapidly move from one side of the body to the other. If the arthritic gout miraculously clears up, the stomach immediately acts up.
That's like a seesaw.
Yeah. If a severe skin eruption is suppressed with a topical ointment, the patient suddenly develops a violent internal headache or chronic respiratory catarrh.
This challenges the entire way we usually think about getting better. We think, oh, my skin rash is gone, the cream worked. But this historical framework demands you ask, wait, check the stomach, check the lungs. Where did the disease go?
It is the concept of a closed-loop pressure system. In 19th century holistic thought, the body uses the skin and the extremities as a venting mechanism. Right. A rash or gout is the body pushing the morbid energy as far away from the vital organs as possible. If you apply a harsh topical ointment and force that rash to disappear, you are essentially plugging the vent of a boiling pot.
Ah, that's a great way to put it.
You haven't cured the underlying imbalance, you've just engaged in suppression. You have forced the disease state deeper into the body, where it will attack a more vital organ like the stomach or the brain.
You can't just play whack-a-mole with symptoms. Pushing the disease away from the skin just forces it to set up camp in the solar plexus.
Exactly. The holistic practitioner's goal wasn't just to erase a symptom, but to observe the direction of the cure. True healing, in their view, meant the disease should leave from the inside out, from the vital organs to the extremities, and finally off the skin.
Wow.
If it moved the other way, the patient was actually getting sicker, regardless of how clear their skin looked.
Taking a step back, the journey we've taken through this single, obscure remedy is just Incredible.
It really is a journey.
We started with the ecstatic, moonlight-loving poet and the furious, untouchable child, both suffering from an entirely unshielded nervous system. We tracked that sensitivity inward to the whitewashed tongue, the severe stomach aches triggered by sour wine, and the paradoxical craving for the pickles that destroy them.
Yeah.
And then we watched that internal failure push outward, creating a literal armor of horny split nails, oozing scabs, and painful calluses on the soles of the feet.
It serves as a profound historical map of a human being in a state of total systemic distress, desperately trying to manage their relationship with the outside world.
I want you to reflect on your own life for a moment. Think about when you are emotionally overwhelmed or devastated by a major life disappointment. Where does your body keep the score?
That's the real question.
Does the stress immediately hit your stomach? Do you suddenly lose your ability to digest food? Do you break out in a rash or get a strange migrating pain in your joints? These historical sources prove that this kind of detailed mind-body mapping isn't some new age trend. Human beings have been observing these intricate biological connections with incredible precision for centuries.
The body is constantly narrating its internal state. The question is whether we are trained to listen to the whole sentence, or if we're just picking out isolated words and treating them as separate problems.
Well said. But before we wrap up, there's one final provocative thought to leave you with. It's an eerie little detail buried deep in the margins of these historical medical notes, and it shifts the entire perspective of the remedy.
It is a physiological observation that raises chilling questions about the limits of the human nervous system.
Alongside all of this extreme, agonizing sensitivity, the child who screams at a touch, the adult who cannot handle a beam of sunlight, the stomach that collapses over a piece of bread, Antimonium Crudum, also produces a strange absence of pain where it could be expected. The specific clinical example they recorded was with severe bed sores.
And tissue that is breaking down to that degree should be excruciatingly painful, especially for a patient whose defining characteristic is an oversensitivity to touch.
Exactly. If this entire constitutional profile is defined by an agonizing, unshielded oversensitivity to the world, what does it mean when the body suddenly stops feeling pain altogether in a place where tissue is literally dying?
It suggests a breaking point.
It's complete numb apathy, the body's final, most dangerous defense mechanism. When the armor of calluses and split nails isn't enough to keep the world out, does the nervous system simply pull the plug entirely? It's something for you to ponder long after you finish listening. Because whether you are writing bad poetry in the moonlight, craving pickles, or just dealing with a terrible stomachache, your body is always trying to tell you a story. You just have to learn how to read it.
Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi is a distinguished homeopathic physician, educator, and researcher with over 4 decades of clinical and teaching experience. He is widely respected for his deep command of materia medica, repertory, and constitutional prescribing, combined with a practical, patient-centered approach. Dr. Hashmi has dedicated his career to training generations of homeopathic doctors, blending classical principles with modern clinical insight. He is also known for his innovative work in digital homeopathy, developing educational content, clinical tools, and AI-assisted systems to enhance remedy selection and case analysis. With a strong commitment to ethical practice and lifelong learning, Professor Dr. Rifat Hashmi continues to guide, inspire, and elevate the standards of homeopathic education and patient care.